Yo, what's good, YouTube? We back with another video. We finna be reacting to crazy conspiracy. Yo, I always fuck up on the intro, bro. Fuck. Crazy conspiracy. Oh, crazy conspiracy theories is what we're finna react to, chat. Damn. Could barely get that one out. Fuck. Holy shit. Alright, chat, let's get it.
Crazy conspiracy theories that turned out to be true.
Oh,
Operation Cauldron. The year is 1952, and the British government has just started a secret trial of biological weapons. This secret operation involved scientists from both the Royal Navy and Porton Down, and their job was to release biological agents onto caged monkeys and guinea pigs to see exactly what would happen. And the specific biological agents that these scientists were releasing onto these animals were the following: the pneumonic plague, the bubonic plague, brucellosis, and tularemia. The
Chat, hold on. What the fuck was even all of
animals
those?
were the following: the pneumonic plague, the bubonic plague, brucellosis, and tularemia.
What the fuck is brucellosis, chat? That shit don't sound real.
The ultimate goal of these secret operations were to see what the actual effects be on these animals to test their effectiveness in a warfare situation. But of course, it doesn't end there.
To
This
kill
is
these?
only the beginning.
Damn,
And Britain
imagine?
isn't even the only
Nigga.
government involved.
Nigga, mid warfare, you hit with a fucking gas bomb. That shit gives you fucking the plague. I'm not gonna lie, I'm not fucking with y'all niggas no more. Y'all got it. Y'all are top op. Nigga, you gonna hit me with the plague? I'd rather get hit with a bullet. What the fuck?
Even though this entire operation is undertaken by Britain, these secret tests were actually a joint venture between the United States and Canada as well. And due to this collaboration, US documents actually later confirmed that this operation was not purely defensive in nature, like they tried to initially claim once they were exposed. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Now, when doing testing with extremely infectious diseases, especially when you're doing it in secret, you have to make sure that you're doing this in a way that is extremely covert and safe.
Since you're already playing games anyway, why not earn some free rewards while you're at it? All you need to do is download Buff, let it run in the background,
Chat.
To ensure that nobody sees it and the spread of this disease does not go outside your test subjects. And for that reason, the British government decided that the best way to execute Operation Cauldron was by literally taking a floating pontoon, putting it off the coast of the Isle of Lewis, filling it with 83 monkeys and 3,492 guinea pigs, dragging them into the middle of the water, and then, once this worst recreation of Noah's Ark ever...
They killed 3,088... Wait, how much? 3,492 guinea pigs for this shit? God damn, and 83 monkeys. That's, god damn.
Guinea pigs, dragging them into the middle of the water, and then, once this worst recreation of Noah's Ark ever was in the perfect position, the biological agents that I mentioned earlier were then dispensed onto all of these animals. The first way they infected these animals was by suspending a bomb, which then infected everybody, and the second method was by literally just spraying them as well. And I mean, if they already were able to spray them, then why did they need the bomb? Regardless, once the biological agents were dispersed over all of the test subjects, the animals aboard were then taken onto a boat and then dissected to see their cause of death. I just want to quickly point out how crazy it is that the British government is literally testing out a bubonic plague biological weapon in an open air environment. Like they didn't learn anything from the 1300s. Now here's the thing. After this initial test, Operation Cauldron was initially considered to be successful. The British government felt proud that they had just discovered a brand new biological weapon, and they also had a brand new way of testing biological weapons. But this is where things take a massive turn for the worst. The conspiracy theory here isn't the fact the British government killed an oddly specific amount of guinea pigs. What is what happened during the final series of tests of Operation Cauldron. During one of the very last tests of Operation Cauldron, a commercial fishing vessel accidentally drove directly through a cloud of plague bacteria on its way out of Britain to a fishing trip in the waters outside of Iceland. Now, to the British government's benefit, they did warn this fishing boat multiple times that there was an active military test going on, but the fishing boat ignored it and went right into the danger zone. Now, this is obviously a major concern. A commercial fishing vessel with 18 people on it has now just unknowingly traveled through a huge cloud of bubonic plague and other disease-filled gas. And the British government was extremely aware of this. So what did they do? Did they stop this fishing vessel for disinfection and medical examination to make sure that the fishermen were safe and that there was no spread of disease outside of these fishermen? Obviously not. The British government didn't tell this fishing vessel at all. Instead, what they decided to do was spy on this fishing vessel, turning these 18 crewmates into their brand new guinea pigs. For 21 days following the initial exposure, a British destroyer battleship was secretly observing the fishing vessel and also monitoring all of their radio communications, listening for any sort of medical distress.
Nigga, imagine you on that fishing boat, nigga. You already up there for a couple weeks, nigga. You just trying to make bread for your wife and kids, nigga. And you get the fucking plague? Cuz. Yo, imagine, cuz. You just, nigga, bro, you going to work, regular day. You think it's regular day. And you get the fucking plague. Gang, I'm not gonna lie, that is insane, bro.
Calls. That alone is diabolical. But it gets worse, because during this time when this fishing vessel was being monitored, this fishing vessel was actually scheduled to stop at a port in England for a few days. And during this time, all of the crewmates would be getting off the boat and mingling with the general public. Now, obviously, this would be a huge health concern. So at this point, the British government finally intervened and told them what was going on, right? No. The British government allowed all of these 18 fishermen to mingle with the general public, further expanding their unconsensual human test subject pool. However, fortunately, nobody got sick. And because nobody got sick, and nobody outside a select handful of people involved in Operation...
Fuck that shit. That nigga was finna start... Nigga, that was finna be the first COVID-19 if that shit didn't... Yo. So... Yo, Chad. Nah, this is a conspiracy theory right here. Nigga, is this how COVID's fucking started, cuz? Cuz they did some nut shit like that over there in China, cuz? No fucking way, dog. Them niggas was experimenting on them bats, and they just ended up biting that nigga. It just ended up biting that nigga. That had to been what it was. No fucking way, cuz. What the hell? Nigga, history repeats itself. No fucking way, bro.
Cauldron were aware of this. Everybody involved swept Operation Cauldron under the rug, and for decades to come, Operation Cauldron was essentially not real. The government was successfully able to cover it up at the time,
That's how you
and
know.
most of the documents relevant to this case were actually
I ain't gonna lie, bro.
And that is
I'm
where
on
the
to
story
something.
would have ended.
Chat, I'm on
That
to
was
something.
until
I'm on to
rumors
something.
started floating around that eventually became a conspiracy theory. And by the time that these rumors and conspiracies were really starting to gain some traction, there was finally some investigation that was taking place. One of the first acknowledgments of this conspiracy was in 1979, literally 27 years after the experiment, when one of the MPs of the Western Isles, the area where this experiment took place, acknowledged this conspiracy and even questioned the defense secretary about them in Parliament. However, the defense secretary literally just said, quote, they did not impinge in any way on the general public, and the case at that point was essentially closed. That was until 6 years later in 1985, when a whistleblower named Clive Ponting came across one of the files surrounding Operation Cauldron that had not been destroyed. And with Clive wanting the public to be aware about this crazy experiment, Clive anonymously told the Observer newspaper about it, which led to the Observer writing an article headlined, British Germ Bomb Sprays Trawler. But even with this crazy story being exposed and making headlines, it was still not confirmed or acknowledged by the British government. 9 years later, in 1994, it was once again brought to Parliament, but shut down for being unsubstantiated. But then, finally, on January 21st,
They keep
2008,
bringing this
the
shit back up.
Information
Nigga,
Commissioner's
it's already
Office
dead.
ruled
Let it
against the
happen.
Ministry
It's already
of Defense,
gone, bro.
forcing them to release
They keep
everything
bringing
they
this shit
had
up.
about Operation Cauldron. And the biggest smoking gun that still existed was a 47-minute-long video that showed the exact pontoon that was used and footage of exactly what happened on that pontoon. This 47-minute-long video literally exposed everything, and at that point, it was confirmed 56 years later that this crazy...
These niggas got documented, edited proof. What the fuck? And they still didn't believe that shit?
See, conspiracy theory was actually the truth. The business plot.
That's insane.
The year is 1933.
Dog,
Franklin
did
D.
y'all see
Roosevelt,
them
or
monkeys in
FDR,
there,
has
bro?
just been elected as the 32nd president of the United States. However, some people are not happy about this election. Specifically, some of the most wealthy and powerful businessmen in America. Why were these wealthy businessmen upset about FDR becoming president?
didn't they
Well,
like
that's
Roosevelt?
because FDR had a major plan to implement social programs within the United States, along with other progressive policies, and most notably, a shift away from the gold standard. Now, with all of these new political
Not gonna
changes
lie,
about to be
I don't
implemented implemented
pay
under
attention to history
FDR,
class.
what do you think
I
that
don't
these
know what the
powerful
fuck
businessmen
they're
did in
talking
retaliation?
about.
Do you think they
What is
maybe
the gold
donated more
standard,
money
chat?
to the other party next time the election rolled around? Or do you think that they tried to organize a coup to overthrow FDR to have a fascist regime installed within the United States of America? Well, if you're
guessing
watching
it's
this
the
video,
second part.
you know it's the last one. But let me explain. Smedley Butler is a retired military
Schmedley.
corps major general.
Schmedley.
And in 1933, he was
Schmedley.
retired and highly decorated, and also a very outspoken anti-war activist. Smedley Butler was generally respected, but was specifically adored by the veteran population within the United States, a population that was relatively large after World War I. And because all of the most wealthy and powerful businessmen were upset that FDR was about to fundamentally shift the country, at least in the eyes of these men, they decided that their best course of action was to orchestrate a coup and to have Smedley Butler be at the forefront of it. And the reason why they wanted Smedley specifically was because he was respected by veterans. And for
I'm
that
not gonna
reason,
lie,
if they could get
this is
Smedley
starting
on
to
their
sound
side
familiar,
to
chat. I'm
spread
not
their
gonna lie.
message, then these veterans would feel inspired to follow their ideology, and they could use that manpower to overthrow the government. That
Did I
was the
see this
idea.
in a Captain America
The first point of
movie?
contact between these wealthy businessmen and
Yo,
Butler
what's
was when
good,
Gerald
Pigeon?
C. McGuire approached Butler and simply probed him about his stance on FDR to kind of get a temperature check on Butler. And Butler, assuming something was going on, kind of played along and acted like he wasn't on FDR's side when he actually was. And it was at that moment when Butler was aware that some of the most powerful businessmen were all on the same page about
It's,
financing
we're
a
watching
private
a video
army,
about
bringing all of this
conspiracy
manpower
theories and
armed
shit.
directly to the White House, and then giving FDR a list of commands to submit to, and the business plot, aka the fascist regime, would be then installed. The crazy thing is,
Damn,
all they
these
asked
niggas
of
really try
Butler
to
was to
overthrow
give
this
a
nigga.
speech. This coup already had a plan on exactly how they would organize, finance, and
Bro.
manage this small
Chat, where would we be in America if this actually worked? That's my question. Like, how do you overthrow the president? Was this nigga finna be the next president, or is like government was gonna be fucked, and then we was gonna restart like how the niggas did like creating the shit? I mean, yeah, I understand it wouldn't be America, but it's like, what would happen? This wasn't too long ago. This is only like maybe like I don't like 50 years ago. Like, that shit is insane.
army and overthrowing of
Niggas
the government.
really try to
The only
overthrow
thing that
the
they
president.
wanted Butler for was to give
No.
a pre-written speech at the American Legion Convention,
Y'all think-
with the hopes
y'all
that the
think
speech
somebody gonna
would
try to
resonate
overthrow
with
Trump?
these military veterans, causing them to join this coup, allowing these businessmen to follow through with their plan. And as a reward, these people would make Butler the fascist dictator of this new
Nah.
American regime.
Nobody would
now,
overthrow
fortunately, this was something that Butler
I
had
feel like somebody would
absolutely no
try.
interest in. And although he declined
mean,
requests to
could
give
try.
speeches
I don't
on
know.
numerous occasions, and also made it clear that he was anti-war and also anti-banker, these individuals were so stubborn and so certain that Butler was the man to help their dreams come true that they were very persistent. So persistent, in fact, that in 1934, only 1 year later,
Oh,
Butler
shit.
testified under oath before the
That was not 50 years ago, chat. I lied. That was like, yeah, a long fucking time. Okay.
United States House of Representatives Special
1934,
Committee on
long
Un-American
fucking time
Activities,
ago, bro.
specifically about the revelations he had about this entire
Yeah,
plot. But
90
this is where
years.
things get a bit murky,
I'm not
because
that-
the initial
I'm not that
conspiracy
good at
theory
math,
of
alright?
was
Chill
there
out.
American businessmen
not quick
having
math.
secret
Not
conversations
right
and
now.
planning a coup to overthrow FDR to reinstate the gold standard
90 that
a
was
real
91
thing?
years
Yes.
ago?
And unless you believe that Butler was lying
Yeah, they
under
probably not
oath,
gonna
then
be
that
doing all
plot
that
was
shit
absolutely
right now.
confirmed to be true during Butler's testimony. But where things get murky and I guess unconfirmed was the exact length that this plan was actually going to go through.
91
Because
years
when this
ago is a
entire
long
situation was
fucking
initially
time.
exposed, a lot of powerful people, specifically the governor of New York and
Damn.
other politicians, tried to lock
These niggas really smoking out of a pipe. My fault, I just had to get
it off as, oh, well, Butler is over-exaggerating this. This wasn't actually going to happen. These were just rich guys that were upset and they were just chatting ideas, but this wasn't real. And this sentiment by some is also confirmed by the ultimate decision of the Congressional Committee. One, because nobody was ever prosecuted when this was brought to light. And also, the Congressional Committee final report said, quote, there is no question that these attempts were discussed, were planned, and might have even been placed in execution when and if the financial backers deemed it
Wait, they
expedient.
took this to
But that's
court,
the
Chet?
issue. Might have
They
been
took it to
placed
court?
into execution. That plausible deniability gave these extremely powerful men an out to not be prosecuted, to not be further questioned, and also to allow them to have the story of, oh, no, that wasn't real, that was just an idea, when the plan ultimately failed and was exposed to the general public. Big Tobacco lied to you. In today's
they
day and
always
age, we
getting out-
know that smoking
see,
cigarettes has numerous side
They always
effects. We know that
getting
tobacco
out,
is
out of fucking trouble with this loopholes and shit, talking about something. No, we were just talking about it. We did not put it in action. I'm tired of these rich niggas not going to jail. Take these niggas to jail too, cuz.
bad for you. We know that inhaling carcinogens is not good for your lungs. And we know that
Right.
nicotine is extremely addictive. Unfortunately, this is all now common knowledge and adults can make their decision on what they want to do. But prior to the 1990s, major tobacco companies had the general public in a chokehold, nearly convincing the world that
Nah,
smoking
niggas-
cigarettes
niggas
was not
was
only
saying
a good thing to do, but
that it
potentially
was a
even
good,
healthy
like,
for some
yo,
situations.
Imagine in this fucking day and time they're telling you it's good to smoke cigarettes. Bruh, wasn't it a point in time that kids was smoking cigarettes, chat? That shit, yo. And yeah, a fucking 3-year-old go be smoking a cigarette. No.
Now, the real paradigm shift around cigarettes happened in the 1990s, when whistleblowers were exposing the tobacco companies for all of the nefarious activities they were doing.
What does
However, that wasn't
whistleblower
the first
mean,
or
bruh?
only time that science proving cigarettes were bad for you actually came out. In the early 1950s, there were multiple scientific studies proving a link between cigarettes and cancer. And it was with the publishing of these studies that the
damn.
American tobacco industry ramped up their marketing to the absolute next
Oh.
level to ensure their chokehold on the American public
the
and to
fuck?
ultimately assert their dominance and maintain their fortune. But even before these studies
Someone
came
who
out, the
reveals
marketing was still
secrets?
heavy. Like, for example, take the 1920s. During the 1920s, it was frowned upon for women
Okay.
to smoke. So for that reason, these tobacco companies took it upon themselves
What?
to
Women
shift
smoke
the
all the
American
fucking-
mindset on women smoking
do you
so
know
that these
how
tobacco
much
companies
old people
had
smoke?
50%
Old women
more
smoke
consumers.
fucking
And how they did
cigarettes,
this
guys?
was crazy. Essentially, what these tobacco companies did was not only pay influential women to smoke in public settings and to be
Oh.
photographed and filmed smoking in public settings, but they even hijacked the women's rights movement from the 1920s to make their cigarettes seem like a way of fighting the patriarchy. And with the rise of
crazy.
feminism and empowering women, tobacco companies realized that if they could get their cigarettes involved
these
in the
niggas
movement,
was
they would get a lot
masters
of money.
at
And what they
marketing, cuz
ultimately
what
ended
the
up doing
fuck?
was positioning cigarettes as a way to fight against the patriarchy, and they even eventually, in some ad campaigns, called cigarettes freedom sticks, empowering women to fight
Wow.
social norms by smoking cigarettes and being just like the men. That's the crazy level of manipulation we're talking about. But
That
that's
is
truly
nah.
only the beginning. But I
Nah,
wanted to
fuck
highlight
it.
that
Fuck it. That's D1 marketing there. At that point, that really they were just using their resources and riding the wave, low key. Like, I understand it probably wasn't right to use it, but like that's D1 marketing right there. I can't lie. That's D1 marketing.
example because it's just insane. Another example of tobacco
Yeah, like, you
companies
gotta
hijacking
respect
a
it,
movement
at
was
least.
during World War II. In the early 1940s, smoking in public was actually banned in Nazi Germany because it was known that smoking was not good
damn.
for you. So tobacco companies in America made smoking
They
seem like they
decided
were
to ban that
anti-Nazi
smoking.
activities and patriotic in nature. Once again, hijacking a movement and profit that they knew
Wow.
would ultimately lead to deaths. But on top of hijacking women's
These
rights movements or
niggas
wartime
made
movements, the
smoking
tobacco industry was not
patriotic. They made smoking cigarettes patriotic. That is insane. Holy shit! I see why these shits got these niggas in a chokehold. Cause what the fuck? That shit was everywhere, bruh. I know, like what the fuck?
a stranger to creative advertising, and the tobacco company Camel had some extremely notable advertisements
That is
specifically featuring
insane.
doctors and dentists that literally said something along the lines of most doctors smoke Camels, which is literally an
Oh
endorsement.
no,
from
I
doctors
did
to
know
smoke
that they
cigarettes.
did
And these
this. I
ads
did know
ran
that they
for
did this.
decades.
That
And with
doctors
that
were
association
sponsoring
of
this
doctors and
shit.
surgeons with cigarettes, obviously they have to be healthy, right? Oh, and let's not even forget the
fuck?
literal Flintstones cigarette ads, obviously aimed at
Damn,
targeting
what the
children to get interested in
See, I
cigarettes.
told you they
At this
had
point, I
kids
know I'm not
smoking
saying
cigarettes,
necessarily
bro.
anything new, but I really want to emphasize this point that during this time, prior to all of the anti-tobacco messaging that
Holy
most of us
shit,
grew
what
up
the
with, or at
fuck?
least experienced and saw the shift in our lifetime, the perception of cigarettes was completely different in past times. And I'm really trying to emphasize that point, that how strong the marketing and propaganda was
is
in the name of
crazy.
tobacco. Which leads us to the conspiracy theory at play. It was claimed that all throughout the early 1900s, from basically 1900 to the 1990s, Big Tobacco had no idea that there was any negative side effects of tobacco. They were claiming that through all of the research that they did, there was health benefits and negligible side effects to tobacco, and for that reason, they were
gonna
doing
lie,
nothing wrong in their marketing or advertising,
health
and their product
benefits
was
is
completely
crazy.
fine. Now, obviously today, we know that's not true at all. Although, at the time, the conversation was still ongoing, and it was up for people to decide whether they wanted to believe reports that were not typically marketed or the marketing that was shoved down their throats on a daily basis. In 1964, when another major report came out, once again directly linking lung cancer in cigarettes, did these
Honestly,
tobacco
chat, I think because we have the internet now and stuff, no, it's like it's way harder to have a conspiracy theory like this. Like you can't tell worldwide that fucking something is bad. I mean, something is good, and for somebody who really cares not to just post and be like, no, this is bad. Da, 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 da. Like I feel like it's too easy for somebody to patch that shit type shit. Yes, bro, they really do, bro.
industries do anything to change their blend? Did they potentially stop selling their products? Did they recognize what they were doing was hurting people? Of course not. What they decided to do was double down and not only buy their own studies and buy their own doctors, but they decided to go on marketing campaigns that specifically planted seeds of doubt in the consumer's mind to essentially try to nullify any genuine articles coming out against cigarettes. And I'll tell you what, these tobacco companies
they just had
much
like
more of a marketing
newspapers
budget
and
than
shit
any
back then.
independent researcher could ever dream of.
They barely could stop it with the newspapers. What do you think they're finna do with the internet? Like, I don't think they could like make up a general lie like this, but like, they probably are doing it with the other shit. I don't know.
And it was for that reason that Big Tobacco was able to have this reign for so.
Are you having trouble trying to keep up with your professor?
I need
You've got
YouTube
to try
Premium
Otter.
chat. What
Here's
the
how it
fuck?
works.
Long. So even though real articles were coming out proving that cigarettes were detrimental to your health, for every one study that was coming out, the tobacco industry was paying for hundreds, flooding the market with conflicting information, allowing people to never come to a real conclusion. And on top of that, the tobacco industry was also actively trying to discredit any doctor who was personally speaking out against tobacco to once again lower their credibility.
you
In the
funny
eyes
as
of
a
the general
bitch,
public,
Toy.
if you listened to Big Tobacco's propaganda and took it at face value, it would seem like they're doing everything right. As studies were coming out, they made sure to do their own independent studies to try to confirm or dispute those claims. And they were also actively trying to make as many improvements as possible to cigarettes,
there's the fucking
specifically
downfall
adding
for that
filters
shit.
and whatnot. And on top of this, Big Tobacco even created its own health committee to investigate tobacco even further
Health
to ensure that the
committee?
product that they were selling was 100% healthy. But the smoke and mirrors, no pun intended, could not go on for long. In 1996, Jeff Wiggins became one of the most famous whistleblowers in American
1996?
history
Nigga,
when he provably exposed the
not
tobacco
long
industry
at
for
all.
not only
That's not
manipulating nicotine
yo.
levels in tobacco to increase its addictiveness, as well as adding other chemicals such as ammonia, but also for intentionally falsifying reports and also
Nigga, ammonia? Nigga, don't you use that shit to clean fucking floors, nigga? You put that shit in mop buckets. What the fuck? And y'all are niggas be smoking that. That's insane.
hiding reports that proof cigarettes were dangerous for many decades. I'll be honest, at first I was kind of hesitant to add this into this video because I know that people are so aware now of how bad cigarettes are and how manipulative the cigarette industry can be. But I wanted to reiterate some key examples and also make the point extremely clear that there was once a time when people believed the propaganda from cigarette companies. And there was multiple decades where the cigarette companies had the American public and the world in a chokehold.
I'm not gonna lie, bro. This shit got me thinking, like, what would these niggas not believe back then? What would these niggas not believe? Like, what could you tell these niggas that they wouldn't believe? Because at some point in the world, niggas didn't know shit about nothing. So it's like, you can tell somebody anything and they'll believe that shit. Nigga tell the next ocean was green. Like, you probably never seen that shit, but like, fuck. That's
because
insane,
of their
bro.
targeted
Oh, we
propaganda.
still got another
And
one
it
to
has
go. I thought that
taken
was the last
many
section.
decades, banning of advertisements, multiple whistleblowers, numerous studies proving the link between tobacco and cancer, just to try to make a dent in the massive
They wouldn't
narrative
leave
that the
civil
tobacco
rights?
company built
Holy
for the
shit,
last
bro.
near century. But yeah, it literally changed how Americans perceived marketing and corporations forever. And for that reason, I thought it was worth keeping in this video. But let's move on. The Oak Ridge experiments. At this point, everybody and their grandmother knows about Project MK Ultra,
shit.
and we've even talked about it in this
I
exact
wouldn't be
series.
here.
But did you know that Canada had
I
its
wouldn't be
own
here.
secret MK Ultra
Shit.
project and is still currently being investigated by the Canadian government? That's right. It is called the Oak Ridge Experiment. Oak Ridge, for years, was the only forensic hospital in Ontario for people that were deemed criminally insane. And for that reason, Oak Ridge was the place that people were sent to who truly needed a psychiatric recalibration. And it was believed that the new experiments that were going on within the Oak Ridge walls were beneficial. The Oak Ridge experiments start with a doctor named Elliot T. Barker, who was a newly graduated psychiatrist
shit.
out of the University
So this the shit that they be making horror movies out of, with the fucking psych wards and shit. Y'all remember that movie with the nigga who was in the psych ward and he had like 6 different personalities and he fucking kidnapped that girl? I don't remember what it's called, but that movie, this reminds me of that movie.
of Toronto. And ever since graduating school, he was inspired by Dr. Maxwell Jones, who developed the concept of therapeutic community as a treatment for mental illness. And essentially what therapeutic community was having the mentally ill patient take an active part in their own treatment. But not only that, play an active role in the treatment of others as well, basically creating some sort of group healing. Now that on the surface may not seem evil per se. It's interesting, especially for the 1950s. It's
why would
at
it
least
be
something to
evil?
potentially consider. But what stemmed out of this initial inclination turned into something truly evil. After
would it be
graduating,
evil,
but
chat?
before arriving at Oak Ridge, Baker traveled around the world visiting interesting places, notably Chinese prison camps, to see how they controlled people
Chinese
with behaviors. When Barker finally arrived in Oak Ridge in 1965, he had his perfect plan in mind. And
See,
his
that's how
great
you know
idea
that
was
shit was
to
like
combine
prison, bruh.
truth serums, sensory
Lobotomy?
deprivation, and patient-led encounter groups to force
Truth
psychopaths to
serums?
confront their mental illness.
Yo, is
Already
that a
off to
real
a rough
thing?
start, and I'm sure you can kind of already
truth
see the
serums a real
MK
thing,
Ultra
chat?
comparisons. But trust me, we're only getting started. One of the first major issues with Oak Ridge was the fact that they were completely understaffed, which was one of the big incentives for hiring patients as therapists. They were basically having the prisoner patients that were already at Oak Ridge to
They
now
kinda
act as the caretaker or therapist for other patients. Essentially, the blind leading the
Oh,
blind.
hell
But it
no.
wasn't just talk therapy that
Exactly,
these
the-
prisoner patients were
exactly.
having with each other.
You said
At
it
Oak Ridge, you could
perfectly.
order a
Blind
drug
leading the
treatment for
blind.
another patient just because you wanted to see what would happen. And that includes ordering somebody else LSD, methamphetamine, or even some of their truth serums. And they
Nigga,
even
meth?
offered alcohol
Nigga, you
therapy.
can order somebody meth?
Interestingly, they knew that the alcohol wasn't going to cure mental illness, but what they figured would happen was that the alcohol would lower the mental defenses of these patients, forcing them to examine their own shortcomings,
Yo,
ideally
chill out,
allowing
bruh.
them to
Nigga
become
tryna do
aware
meth.
of their mental illness, and then at that point becoming cured. That was the mindset, at least at the time. And while it's an interesting hypothesis at best, this was taken as truth and implemented in the worst way possible. The experiments that took place under Barker at Oak Ridge became more and more depraved and more unconsensual, and typically included patients with numerous experimental drug treatments multiple
That's
times a
crazy.
day, essentially
So-
keeping the inmates drugged out
basically
of their
these
mind to
niggas
the
was
point of
just
psychosis.
drugging each other.
One of the men that was held at Oak Ridge said the following, quote, "They gave you 6 shots a day of that stuff. By the end of the day, you didn't know who you were or what you were doing. You can't do that to people over and over and call it treatment, because that's just a nice word that people want to hear. The real word is torture." Because
Low-key, I think they low-key still do this shit. Cause like, that's what everybody be saying, that they just be drugging up these niggas and just having them sit up in there. So it's like, I feel like they just sit up in there high as fuck all day. That gotta be what it is.
that's all it was, beginning to end. And the experience that one man had within Oak Ridge was not uncommon. That was essentially the norm. But on top of just injecting drugs into prisoner patients, they also took it a step further. Barker, shortly after, invented something known as the Total Encounter Capsule. And essentially what it was a windowless room with padded walls, no furniture, and only an open
Yo,
door. There was no lights,
that's how
there
New
was one
Orleans
hole for
is,
food,
chat?
and that was it. Prisoners would be sent in this room, naked, and would be in there alone in the dark for as long as 10 days at a time. Now,
Naked,
similar to
alone
MK
in
Ultra,
the
the
dark.
point of these experiments were to
That
try
sounds-
to break
that
the
does
mind
not
of the
sound like a good
individual.
combo.
Although with MK Ultra, the goal
I
is
know
mind
what I would
control,
do.
and with the Oak Ridge experiments, the goal, at least allegedly, was to help solve mental illness through what ended up just being torture. What's really interesting was that the Oak Ridge experiments at the time weren't necessarily even a secret. People weren't just extremely privy to it. And for those who were in the know, specifically in the psychiatric community, Elliot Baker seemed like somebody who was doing innovative work, and his experiments
No
were
way.
considered avant-garde, interesting. And because at the time
Nigga.
so little was known about mental health,
Chad, this nigga wasn't even doing his work. He literally said that he had the other fucking insane niggas give the other insane niggas pills and drugs. This nigga won't doing shit. He just out here supplying pills and drugs.
this was seen as a great opportunity to learn. And people even believed that these treatments could potentially be beneficial,
just
which
using these
obviously
niggas
was
as
not the
test
case at all.
dummies.
But it still continues to get worse. Another major issue that was happening in Oak Ridge was because it was gaining popularity through the experimental treatments that were happening in it, the government was becoming more and more open to sending lesser
Bro, I
criminals
know,
in. And
bro.
it even got to the point where mischievous teenagers that were
literally
getting
just
caught up in
drug
trouble
dealing.
were given the
They're just
option to
sitting in
either
there
serve
getting
prison
free
time or
drugs,
go to
bro.
Oak Ridge. And if you don't know what's going on behind Oak Ridge, anything sounds better than prison. And keep in mind, these people weren't murderers. These were like kids that were doing drugs and stealing cars. Not good, but there's a difference. But here's the thing. These teenagers that
Nigga, they sending teenagers in here, cuz? They just sending anybody in
ended
this
up getting
bitch.
sent to Oak Ridge had the same experience as these other criminals, coupled with the fact that not only were they tortured all day themselves, but they were also surrounded by extremely mentally ill people that were also tortured. And it goes without saying
No way. I ain't gonna lie. You probably ain't gonna lie. They probably became mental ill being in there with them niggas for that long. Cause no way.
the environment was extremely hostile, specifically because staff was low and security was almost non-existent. Patients had to fend for themselves, and in some cases they were literally taking care of each other, although I use the term
see, I
taking
told you,
care of
Chad.
lightly, because they were responsible for each other, but nothing beneficial was happening. And unfortunately, some extremely depraved things were happening. But in case that isn't bad enough, in 1976, another forensic unit was opened, this time for women.
Damn.
I guess I forgot.
Chad, this shit is big as fuck. And this is just for crazy niggas? They had to been bringing other people up in there, bruh. They had to, yo, bruh. They had to been bringing other people up in here, bruh. Because no way, it had to been like hella teenagers. Like it's not that many crazy people in the world for you to need this much space, nigga. That shit go all the way back there, and it's another section. It's another section in the back that go like this, bro. What the fuck are you doing with? Like,
to mention it, but Oak Ridge was
Oh my
only for men.
God.
So they opened another location specifically for women. The location
So it's
opened
two
with
big
30
ass
extremely
yo.
mentally ill women. And unfortunately, these women were subject to the same conditions as Oak Ridge, but there was something worse happening. Because
freaked
while
out,
at Oak
dog.
Ridge, inmates were taking care of each other, in this new all-female facility, they decided that it would be smart to take some of the men from Oak Ridge to bring them to this new female facility, giving these
To do
men
what?
the role of therapist. That's right. Some of the most dangerous men in Canada, a lot of which who were in Oak Ridge for
the
sexual-related
therapist.
crimes, who have been tortured for the last few years.
nigga, they just sent these niggas to fucking them. Like, what the fuck?
Are now going to be sent to an all-women's facility with low security
Exactly!
to act as some sort of authoritative
Exactly!
figure.
What
I'm
the
sure you
fuck?
can only imagine what happened.
No.
And unfortunately, it was probably even sadder than you could possibly imagine. So yeah, we all know about MK Ultra, but
That's
in the
all
1960s
they
and
sent them
70s
to
in
do
Canada,
that,
the
like,
exact same things were going
bruh.
on. To me, this reminds me a lot of the whole lobotomy thing. It got very popular and was interesting for a while, but ended up just being something that was not cool whatsoever.
Oh, shit,
There's
what the
actually an
fuck?
interview from 1993 where Elliot Barker goes on record on camera defending his
did
work at
call
Oak
it,
Ridge,
I
saying
can't
that,
lie.
quote, it was the reasonable thing to do at the time. And he also now
Nigga,
resents the fact that he has
reasonable?
to
You're
try to
just
defend
drilling
himself
into
for his work.
niggas'
And that's because
heads.
even in the 1990s, when people were becoming more and more privy to what was happening, they saw exactly how hellish the conditions truly were. The Oak Ridge experiments went on for over 15 years, and the ultimate result was absolutely no psychiatric development. Today, the Ontario Superior Court judge has officially condemned the experiments at Oak Ridge as flagrant and outrageous. But even still, with hindsight being 2020, how does a psychiatrist who's going to Chinese labor camps to investigate behavior control and putting convicted rapists into a female mental asylum as therapists seem like a
That
good
is
idea in
insane.
any world to anybody? That's what I'm asking. And like I said, I know hindsight's 2020, but who thought these were good ideas? Not to mention all of the forced drugging
They were
and
just
sensory
doing
deprivation
shit.
of these psychiatric patients and prisoners. On
They
June
didn't give a
25th,
fuck what they were
2020,
doing
a
to these
civil
people.
lawsuit brought
Ain't
by
no way.
28 former patients of Oak Ridge sought justice from Barker and his partner for subjecting them and every other patient of Oak Ridge to unethical and degrading human experimentation from 1966 to 1983. And in August of 2020,
Damn, nigga, you thought that shit was a good. See, it's because your fucking fault. It's your fucking fault, bro. Why? I ain't gonna lie. How they have enough conscience enough to fucking go to fucking court about this? I would imagine after that your brain is fucked. Like you're incapable to even have think of a sentence. Like that's insane. They went to court for this. I
to a
mean, I'm
unanimous
glad
three-judge
they made
panel
it out.
sided
Don't
with
get me
the
wrong.
victims
I'm
of
glad
Oak
they made
Ridge
it out.
and awarded general
But
and
it's like,
punitive damages
wow.
to the victims in the range of $1,000 to $2.7
Bro.
million for the 28 patients.
Bro.
This decision not only brings some semblance
Go.
of justice to the victims of Oak Ridge, but it is also a massive win for transparency,
getting
accountability,
my
and
remote.
ultimately the greater mental health movement. Although it is unfortunate that justice was served so many
My
years
bad,
later
chat.
and that any of
My
this
little
even
brothers.
happened in the first place. But ladies and gentlemen, there you have it. Hopefully you guys enjoyed watching this video. And if you guys want a part 5, please let me know. Either by leaving a like on this
shit,
video
that's the
or
end of
just
the
drop a
video.
comment saying you want part 5. And if this
Alright,
is the
chat.
first part of a series that you're watching or
All right, chat. 2.2 points. 2.7 million. Hold on. We gotta go back.
lawsuit brought by 28
Wait, they got 2.7 million dollars from that?
former patients of Oak Ridge
Did they
sought
each get that,
justice from
chat?
Barker and his partner for subjecting them and every other patient of Oak Ridge
They each
to
got
unethical and
2.7
degrading
million?
human experimentation from 1966 to 1983. And in August of 2022, a unanimous 3-judge panel sided with the victims of Oak Ridge and awarded general and punitive damages to the victims in the range of $1,000 to $2.7 million for the 28 patients.
Oh, so no. These niggas had to split that shit up. Okay, I see.
This decision not only
28
brings some
patients.
semblance of justice to the
That's not
victims
that
of
bad.
Oak Ridge, but it is also a massive win for transparency,
couple hundred K.
accountability, and ultimately the greater mental health movement. Although it is unfortunate
still
that justice
28
was
niggas,
served so many years later and that any of this even happened in the first place. But ladies and gentlemen, there you have it. Hopefully you guys enjoyed
Bro.
watching this video.
I'm not gonna lie. No. Oh, per person? Oh shit, that's hella bread. That's hella paper. damn, was it worth it though? That's the question. Was it worth it? Them niggas was in there for like probably 10 years plus. Just, and the females at that, they was just in there high, like being assaulted, all type of stuff for like several years, cuz that is insane, bruh. 50-50? Nah, bruh. Nah, bruh. It's not worth, I don't see it being worth it, bruh. Nah. No way. So you're saying, chat, you would do that? You would get in there for 2.7 million. You would take that for like, let's say 5 years. 5 years for 2.7 million? That's worth it? Think about it. You're being assaulted. You're being drugged for 5 years straight. For 2.7 million. That's crazy. That's crazy. I can't lie. That's crazy. I'm not doing that shit. Oh, you freaked out. You OC. You OC with it. What the fuck? Freaky ass nigga.
And if you guys want a
Freaky ass nigga, he is 69. God. Yo, follow up. Follow up, please. I need all the support, bro. Appreciate it, bro. Appreciate it, Brody. Thank you. Shit, bro. I don't know what to react to next. That was kind of like the last one I had just to react to. Yo, I thought I had TTS on. So like when y'all follow, you could hear your name. Whatever. I'll turn it on for next fucking stream. Yeah, I think this might be end of the stream. Thanks for following, so you can come back to stream. I'll probably go stream tomorrow. I'm gonna have some more videos for us to watch and shit. So yeah, I think this might be the end of the stream. Edit some clips and shit. I'll see you, Brody.